Hey Clear Lake peeps, Ross England here with Clear Lake Guide Service. Gonna do something a little bit different today. We're gonna try to do this a little bit more often. Said we'd try to do it earlier, but honestly, it's just hard for me to motivate myself to do this kind of stuff. But we got something to show you today, so we have something to talk about. So look, it's the first part of March. Fishing's pretty good. Even though today is a Monday where we actually have had a pretty cruddy set of weather yesterday. Water temperatures dropped a couple of degrees over the last couple of days. Air temperatures dropped almost 15 degrees since Thursday. So not exactly what you would call really good conditions. Weatherman said it wasn't going to be windy today, and it's not bad. It really isn't. Water temperature started out this morning 52.5. Okay, so what I want to talk to you peeps about, I've actually got quite a few questions and comments, which I appreciate that someone's paying attention and actually looking at this stuff. If I went simply by the like button being pushed, I'd have to think nobody's watching. We're coming into late fall. We're coming into late winter, very early spring here on Clear Lake. We've had some really goofy conditions in February that are unseasonably warm. What that means is, for this time of year, there's actually fish on the bank. I'm not going to say that there's a ton of them, but if you look around and spend time cruising around, especially in the afternoons, you can see fish up into 2 and 3 feet of water and behind the tules. We've already seen fish suspended under docks. A lot of different ways that you can approach a fishing trip here to Clear Lake looking for bass. No secret, I'm kind of known as a finesse guy. Here's the truth. We've won tournaments on Dropshot, we've won tournaments on shaky heads, we've won tournaments on LV500s, and we've won tournaments on swim baits. So I don't mind being tagged as a finesse guy, because you know what, out of all those methods that I just mentioned, the one that's the most fun to me is when you pick up a light spinning rod and you catch big fish. There's just no beating it as far as I'm concerned. So let's talk about 2 rods that you really ought to have set up coming up here to Clear Lake over the next, actually, if you really want to get down to it, probably through the end of April. Definitely through the end of March. We'll take this 1 month at a time. 2 rods I'm never going to be without out here. One's a Dropshot rod. You can choose whatever worm you want to choose. This is a 4-inch. This is a Robo worm, Folkstad Special, which is a very consistent worm for me. The Margarita Mutilator is a good one. The MM3, Oxblood, you name it. If I didn't mention something that you use on a regular basis, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. It just means I don't use it. With what I do out here guiding, I have to produce fish every day, and I can't really goof around. My goof around days are days like today, when I'm out looking for something different, something new. So, Dropshot rod, shaky head rod. Those 2 spinning rods are what you've got to have up here in the month of March. Now let's talk about what we've got on them real quick. Both of those rods have 10-pound braid. I don't know if you can see it with the sunlight and everything, but I actually like the yellow braid just because it's so easy for me to see. A lot of times I'll fish, especially with the Dropshot, I'll fish slack line, and all I'm doing is watching that slack, looking for a telltale tick, tap, tighten, loosen, whatever. So I really like that yellow line. So let's jump over to the Dropshot real quick. The leader, so it's 10-pound braid My preference is Power Pro. You use what you want. Today and through probably the end of March, I'm going to have at least 12-pound fluorocarbon, in many cases 15 fluorocarbon. If I'm up flipping or pitching up and around the Tules, I'll definitely go 15 because I've had some fish break me off under those circumstances. Day in and day out, 12 for this time of year and this time of watercolor is really good for me. I'll get into the actual hooks and whatnot in just a little bit. Same drill here. I used a little bit shorter leader, not quite this short, but you know, I'm only talking about maybe a 3-foot leader with a shaky head, and it's going to be 12 or 15-pound fluorocarbon on that 10-pound Power Pro again. So rods, we have our own little choices here. For the drop shot, I really prefer a 2-power. It's just got a light enough tip, it's got enough give that you can really get a real good feel of what's going on with the bait. In most cases with the shaky head, a 3-power. But a 2-power works pretty well. The only time you really get into trouble with a 2-power is if you're fishing up in the Tules and you're throwing it back in there quite a ways, and now you're trying to get fish out of there. You'll lose more fish on a 2-power than you will on a 3-power. So you can actually get by with 2-power on both of them. If I really want to have a lot of fun, I'll drop the drop shot down to a 1-power, but try to stick with a 7-foot 1-power, 2-power or 3-power. 2 is probably the preference of all 3 of those for both. This is my little tackle kit. Pretty much use a size 1, which you probably can't even see this, so I don't know why I'm doing it. A size 1 or a 1/0 Gamakatsu drop shot hook. It's just never let me down. You know, we've hooked double-digit fish on it, and I've never had one break, never had one open up. It's super sharp. That little hook has a tendency when it goes in the mouth, it sticks absolutely wherever it touches. So that little dude is good. As far as the shaky head, we don't pour our own, but we order them, and then Jim just paints his black. I guess I have more time during the winter, so I powder coat mine. You know, a June bug or a purple, just something that matches the worm that we're using a lot. 3/16 ounce. You can get by with a 1/4 ounce if you're fishing really deep, but for what I do, both the drop shot weight and the shaky head weight, 3/16 ounce. The good thing about that is every time I pick up that bait or lift that bait, regardless if it's a shaky head or a drop shot, it weighs the same. So every time I pick it up, I know what that thing is supposed to weigh. If it's lighter, it may be a fish. If it's heavier, it may be a fish. Sometimes when you're switching back and forth with weights, you kind of get goofed up a little bit because it just feels different. So bait choices, I already talked a little bit about them. I'll tell you what, this has been a really good bait the last couple of years once I found it. Made by Zoom. It's called the Z3 Swamp Crawler and MM3. You can't beat Margarita Mutilator, whether it's the original version or number 2 or number 3. They're just good baits on Clear Lake. This is a 6-inch version. Then for shaky heads, Zoom trick worms. Don't get so hung up on color. This is a green pumpkin. This is a June bug. We throw watermelon. We throw watermelon candy. We throw oxblood, probably 4 or 5 different colors during the course of the year. The one thing that will happen to a lot of people when you're first trying to figure out how to fish a shaky head, and I'm not going to go over actual fishing with them. I want to do that one day when it's Jim, so we can kind of film him fishing and talk about it rather than sit here in a static situation. One of the things that's really hard for new people to shaky head fishing to get a hang of is how hard you have to set the hook. If for some reason you continue to have a hard time getting your fish hooked on a shaky head, because that Zoom is a tough plastic, check into this little dude. It's made by Z-Man. It's called a Finesse Worm Z. It's almost identical to the Zoom version of a trick worm, but it's out of that Elastec material, and the Elastec it's a lot softer, it's a lot easier to get a hook set through. One thing I haven't decided yet, it also has a real high flotation. I don't know if that makes a difference in getting bit or not, because I hardly ever use it, but I will switch a client over to it if they're having a hard time hooking fish. The most common thing that you see when you're trying to get somebody new to shaky head fishing, they figure out what the bite feels like, they set the hook, you see the line come up, fish jumps, spits the bait because it was never hooked. So this is just a real brief start today for what, depending on the feedback we get, what we'll either continue doing or we won't continue to do it. I told you I had something to show you. One of these two spinning rods came into play this morning, and it's funny because I was going to try and stop and film this because I finally decided it was time, and every time I stopped in a calm spot, the wind started to blow, and I thought, well, before I go here, I may as well make a couple casts. I've caught fish everywhere I've gone today. So one of the first places I stopped today, though, was this one. So bear with me while I get a hold of this fish. How's that for a spinning rod fish? Don't know how much it weighed because I didn't put it on a scale, but it was 23 inches, or I should say it is 23 inches long. And it's going to go right back where I caught it, so don't kid yourself. You can finesse fish big fish. I hope you folks enjoyed this. If you did, I'm way interested in listening to your critiques. So Clear Lake Guide Service on Facebook, where you'll probably see this video pop up. And don't forget, you can always call me, 707-349-1427. Ross England, Clear Lake Guide Service. You guys and gals have a good week. We're going to be working and fishing this week.